Hi, hello. I hope you're taking care of yourself. It's been a minute. If you're new here, my name is Lexi, and I am currently working on a video that has me so deep in the trenches that we have burrowed through the mantle and into Earth's core. And before you get your hopes up, it's not a roast. It's not really like anything that I've ever done before on this channel. You don't even know what's about to hit your feed, okay? I don't even know if it's worth the years of my life that it's taking from me as a blood tithe right now, but that's what I've been doing. That's where I've been, and I'm not going to tell you anything else, but soon, hopefully, you will say that it was worth the wait, or I'll just like quit the internet. I don't know. Anyways, today we are talking about everything that I want to read this spring. I try to do my TBRs about every 3 months. I do them seasonally. Astute viewers might know that I never posted one for winter this year, and I actually also didn't post one last year. Seasonal depression and just the general state of the world will do that to you, but the sun is setting at like 7 now instead of 4. A new Legendborn book came out this month that made me feel for like 3 days like my life had meaning again. Some would say that things are looking up. So we're doing a TBR, we're back on track, but the main logistical reason on this channel why I don't do TBRs monthly and instead do them seasonally, except sometimes I don't even do them seasonally like with this winter, that would be because I have never calmed down even one time in my life, and I take this unserious thing of telling you guys the books I want to read really seriously for some reason. So I pick out a smaller group of books overall less frequently and actually try to really commit to reading them, so that way you guys can use this video as kind of a guide, and you can know that if you want to read something at the same time as me, or if you just want to see my thoughts on something, that I'm almost certainly going to get to all of the books that I talk about in videos like this at some point in the next 3 to 6 months. And with that said, casualties from my fall TBR like 6 months ago, I only have 2. We have The White Album by Joan Didion, and then the dreaded House of Leaves. House of Leaves is going to be migrating into my spring TBR because I do still really want to read this. It just so happens that right after I made my fall TBR, I fell into a truly desolate place in terms of my reading slump, and I was not going to be able to get through a like 800-page book that's primary goal is just to fuck with you. If you don't know what this is about, by the way, honestly, neither do I. It's super postmodern. It just has all of these pages that are like entirely blank, but that's not the only format. There's bundles of fun to explore inside of this book, just truly a range of different experiences. But you can probably tell why I didn't feel ready to be like intellectually brutalized by House of Leaves at the end of 2024. It just wasn't going to happen. But now that I'm out of my reading slump and like actually enjoying literature again, it's staying on my TBR. I thought about vlogging it, but that seems like the kind of video that would like really interest 10% of my audience, and then everybody else would be like, what the fuck am I watching? But when it comes to The White Album, this one I am taking off of my TBR. I don't do that very often. I don't have like any specific problems with this book. I did try to pick it up a couple of times and I got like a little bit into the first essay. This is going to sound like cope, and maybe it is, but I feel like there's a version of me in the future that really likes this book. And I would have just forced myself through this book to check the box off of my TBR. I mean, Lord knows I have forced myself through books that are significantly worse, but I just don't want to poison the experience of reading a writer for the first time that, again, it's probably cope, but I do think I will like later in my life when I'm in a bit of a different place. So yeah, it's off the TBR. My apologies. It's only like the second book in the past couple of years that I've had to take off of a TBR, but it feels like really bad every time. But moving on to the 10 new books that I'm adding to the list, a couple of things that I want you to keep in mind. First of all, just in general, as I talk about books in this video, like this should be obvious, but these are books that I have not read. You should never really take anything that I say seriously, but especially when I'm talking about books that I know nothing about, where all of my information on them is just the synopsis and then the aggregate total of all of the reviews that I've only like half watched because I'm trying to avoid spoilers. If I say something that's wrong about these books and you believe me, that's on you. The second disclaimer is that if it isn't already so obvious by how this video has been so far, I am brain dead right now. I am like so beyond fried from the script that I'm writing. It's like 15,000 words long so far and it's not even done. And there is no more reason within me, okay? There's no more logic inside of here. Like I'm a slave to my own amygdala at this point. All of that to say that this video might just be a little bit unhinged because I think I'm actually like going insane. Honestly, lock me up. I need a padded room. Like my brain cells are cannibalizing each other as we speak, but I kind of thought that filming this right now would be fun. So here we are. Anyways, that's everything you need to know. But before we actually get started with all of the new books, I just have a quick word from the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare. I have been using Skillshare for quite a while now to feed the insufferable part of my personality that wants to pick up every single hobby known to man. And in particular, recently, I've been trying to get back into photography because I have this really nice camera that I'm using to film this video, but I haven't really used it outside of my channel since I took my best friend's grad photos back in college. And since I have a trip coming up pretty soon, I thought that now would be a good moment to actually put some time in to develop some real skills. And if you're like me and DSLR photography is something that you're interested in, then Skillshare has a ton of different classes to peruse that are all at a range of different experience levels. For me, I'm trying to figure out how to get out of auto. I want to learn how to manually adjust things like shutter speed and aperture, because that's the best way to really control the kind of image that your camera can create. And I have been finding the Fundamentals of DSLR Photography class by Justin Bridges really helpful for that. But Skillshare has classes on everything from watercolor painting to embroidery to how to use Excel, and so many of them are taught by industry experts. These are people who really know what they're talking about. So if you're looking to get back into an old hobby like me right now, or if you're trying to learn something new, I really recommend checking out Skillshare and seeing everything that they have to offer. And if you are one of the first 500 people to click the link in my description, you can get your first month completely for free. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. Let's get back to it. Hello, welcome back. I'm glad that you made it. I'm gonna move my camera because it's raining right now and the lighting here is honestly kind of atrocious. Hopefully this is better. Okay. Anyways, the first book that I plan on reading this spring is A Million Junes by Emily Henry. And if you are not up to date on your Emily Henry lore, she actually used to write young adult books before she started writing romance. And I've been meaning to read her backlist for a while, because if there's two things in this world that prove to me that I can still feel childlike happiness and hope for my future, it's Emily Henry and like a really good young adult book. I don't think I've seen anyone that I follow talk about this book, which is interesting to me considering how popular Emily Henry is. Obviously, it was a lot less successful than all of her romance releases, but I feel like considering how many stans she has, you would think that somebody would be going into her backlist, which really makes you wonder, like, is this bad? Is that why nobody talks about it? I don't know, man. It doesn't sound bad. It's about the son and the daughter of these two founding families that have had this like blood feud for generations inside of this small town. And it's kind of giving Romeo and Juliet, because obviously Saul, the son, he meets June from the other family and they have this connection, even though they've been told their entire lives to stay away from each other because they're enemies. But there's also a magical component going on here, because I guess there's a curse on their bloodlines, literally like a plague upon their houses. Oh, also it takes place in Michigan, and I am honestly begging you in the comments to name a single duo with more sexual tension than Emily Henry in the great state of Michigan. Like I don't think it's possible. One thing about Emily is she loves a lake. She loves a good Midwestern small town. But yeah, hopefully this is good. I'm excited to report back. The next book I actually caved and bought on my Kobo, so that's where I have it, because, and this is petty, I really hate it when a publisher makes a decision to make the only physical format of a book that you can purchase have single color sprayed edges. Sometimes they're okay. Like I like the new Ava Reid books sprayed edges. I think that those are pretty cool, but you can't have them be both bad and also the only option. Like I can't support that. The book is called Blood Over Brighthaven, and this has been relatively big in most of like the fantasy spaces that I'm in online, but I don't think that it's quite broken into the mainstream yet in the same way as like A Babel by R.F. Kuang. But outside of Jade Legacy and the new Hunger Games book, which are both series that I'm already bought into, Blood Over Brighthaven is by a lot the thing that I've been most excited to read for quite a while. And I've been waiting for it to come out in a format that doesn't have solid colored sprayed edges, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it, so I bought the ebook. And again, maybe that's petty, but especially with this book, which I haven't even told you what it's about yet, but I will, just you wait. I feel pretty confident that this book was made in a lab to appeal to me. Like I think I'm going to absolutely love it. So I don't want the version of the book that I own to be ugly. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I waited. That's the only reason why I didn't consume this in like November when I first heard of it. But even more of my friends have been reading it and loving it recently. I mean, Eden just gave it 5 stars, and we typically have pretty similar taste. And the FOMO that I feel just letting a book that I know was cooked up just for the most insufferable part of my personality, I need to read it. So I caved. It's like, it's one of the next few books I think that I'll be reading. Anyways, though, none of that actually tells you anything about the book. I don't know why any of you are here. What's the premise? Great question. So it's about this girl who studies and trains her entire life to be the first woman who's ever selected to be a high mage in this academic group of wizards who all do magic and like study and stuff. And she's able to earn a spot inside of this society, but obviously a lot of the people there still kind of fucking hate her because magic is for boys and girls are lame. And they assign her an assistant who is seemingly completely unqualified. He was just a janitor inside of the building where they all hang out, and they give her this assistant as a form of sabotage. Like, oh, the powers that be might have decided that you have the merit or whatever that it takes to be here, but we still think that your soft woman brain can't handle this, and so we don't want you to succeed. Like, that's what they're saying to her basically by giving her this man. But it turns out that this guy is not only a mere janitor, but is also this like spy vigilante type dude who had infiltrated the order in an attempt to get information on why the society is so powerful and of how their powers might have led to the destruction of his family and of his tribe a bunch of years ago. And yeah, they're thrown together as outsiders and they have to investigate the society from the inside and like rip out the corruption from the root or whatever. Also, I've heard it's sad. The people yearn for tears. I'm the people. I yearn for the emotional devastation that I felt reading Babel. And yeah, I mean, to say this book is up my alley would be an understatement. This is up my like 7-lane Chicago highway. You know what I'm saying? Next up, let's do Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I am going to be so vulnerable and real with you right now. I don't know what this is about. I bought it purely on faith, and I'm gonna read the back right now so I can give you more information than I had when I bought this, but I adore Gone Girl. I mean, rare moment where I actually specifically love the Gone Girl movie. It's just so good, and there's a reason why, like the million clones that came after Gone Girl who were trying to do the Gone Girl style twist, but it just ended up being kind of worse. There's a reason why in that field Gone Girl is still so good in my opinion. And I also remember really enjoying Sharp Objects. I haven't seen, I think there's a TV show adaptation, but the book was really good. I mean, it was kind of gross, but it was really good. And I can be pretty picky with thrillers, so having an author where I really liked both of her books, I've been meaning to get around to the only other thriller that she has released for like probably 5 years. And I don't know, I was picking out my TBR for this video and I made eye contact with this book in my shelf. It gave me a sultry smile. It beckoned me with a single seductive finger. It said, "Come here. You want to know what happens inside of this, don't you?" What's a girl to do? Anyways, as I have just learned, this book is about a girl named Libby who survived when she was 7 years old, the quote-unquote Satan sacrifice of Kinnicky, Kansas, which is just exactly the kind of thing that would happen in the middle of nowhere in Kansas. Sorry if you're from Kansas, I guess, but you probably agree with me. The people who died were her mom and her 2 sisters, and keep in mind, like, she's 7, so who fucking knows what she saw, but she ends up testifying that her older brother Ben was the killer. He was 15 at the time. He gets convicted, he goes to prison, and then 25 years later, a bunch of, like, internet true crime junkies come knocking on Libby's door and they're like, "Hello, victim of violent crime. Remember when you were the victim of a violent crime and then it was your brother and then you spent 25 years trying to recover from the trauma of being the victim of a violent crime? Well, my elite team of internet true crime junkies digging into your family's trauma think it actually wasn't Ben at all." And for reasons that are truly unimaginable to me at this time, Libby not only entertains this conversation but agrees to like do recon for them and go back to her old town and like ask a bunch of questions of the people who were investigated, because if she agrees to do that, then they'll pay her money, which I can only imagine it's like a lot of money, because why would you do that? I don't know. Obviously the entire situation from that night will be way more complicated than anybody thought and she'll find herself in danger. And yeah, that's Dark Places. Next up, in a bit of a tonal shift, I have Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. I love Frederick Bachman. He is the wisest man that I've never met before in my life. I want him to like just give me a hug and like pat the top of my head and whisper in my ear that it's going to be okay. Is that a normal fantasy to have about an author? Basically, I want him to adopt me. Frederick wrote Beartown, which was my second favorite book of not last year, but the year before that. And then I read A Man Called Uva the year before that, and I really, really liked it. That was also one of my favorite books of whatever year that was at this point. And this book is about an open house that goes terribly wrong when a bunch of people are like touring an apartment, and then a guy who tried to rob a bank but failed ends up coming in and taking all of them hostage to achieve some mysterious end. And if I have learned anything from his other books, I can only imagine that all of these hostages are just going to start like talking about their feelings and unveiling their deep and complex personal traumas and like forging lifelong bonds with each other during this time of turmoil. And I just know it'll be good because Frederick's style really works for me, and I've been waiting to read another one of his books until I feel like enough time had passed since I finished the end of the Beartown trilogy, and I think we're there. I feel like I can fully appreciate them again. I've done enough healing at this point to be broken down again and reforged by a Frederick Bachman book. Next up, I have We Could Be So Good by Kat Sebastian, and I'm actually not picking this up really because of this book, although this book also sounds great, but rather because I have heard such effusive praise for the second book in this series, which is called, I think, If We Were So Lucky, We Could Be So Lucky, one of those. You should be so lucky. And that book is about the star rookie that's just signed on to a baseball team in the 1960s, but his first ever season, like he's starting off as a bit of a flop, and it's him ex the reporter who is assigned to cover his career that year. And just everything that I've heard about it has given me this impression that it's like a slow burn, queer, emotional, mid-century sports anime. And I really fuck with that vibe. I think it sounds really good. But one thing about me is I'm also a completionist, so I had to pick up the first book in the series first, even though they are interconnected standalones, like you could presumably read them in either order. But that decision was made easier by the fact that this also sounds good. This book is about these two men that meet when they're working for for the same newspaper as reporters, and one of them is this super hyper competent, started from the bottom, now we're here type guy, and the other guy is the nepo baby son of either the editor-in-chief or like the guy who owns the entire newspaper, or maybe that's the same guy, I don't really know. But his dad wants him to take over the family business, but he doesn't really have any interest in doing that. So as a compromise, he agrees to just work for the paper for a year and like see what happens, and then he can move on with his life. But when he starts working there, this guy Andy, he meets Nick, who is the hyper competent guy, and Nick ends up helping him out because Andy is kind of a fuck up. He doesn't really know what he's doing, but Nick really does, and they become friends, and then their feelings start to get presumably a little bit more intense. But also, I mean, all of this is on the backdrop of it being the 1950s, which famously, you know, not a great time to be gay. And so even though I imagine that this will be a pretty fun book, I mean, it's like a newsroom romance, I also get the impression from the synopsis, and just from what I've heard about this series in general, that it doesn't shy away from dealing with some pretty serious themes, you know, like what it was actually like. But I like that. I mean, I do have some romances that I really enjoy that are just saccharine, cotton candy sweet, but typically most of my favorite romances, I also kind of like it to be sad. Like I want them to go through shit together and come out the other side okay, you know? And I'm really, really hoping that I will end up enjoying this one enough to continue on to the baseball reporter sports anime romance. Next up is Phantasma, and I get the itch every once in a while to read a really popular romantasy book. I got this one when it was released because the premise, which I'll get to later, it sounded pretty interesting, but then pretty soon after that, I saw a bunch of reviews from people that I follow that I do not at all have the same taste as, and they all really liked it. And for the record, no shade at all to those people. I mean, I think it's really useful sometimes to follow people who are like diametrically opposed to you in terms of book taste. The more people you have that can collectively, whether positively or negatively, give you an idea about whether a popular book is for you, the better. I don't think it really matters whether you agree with them or not. If you use me as an anti-recommendation tool, honestly, I'm glad that I can be of service. Point is, I saw reviews start rolling in from people who we typically don't agree when it comes to romantasy, so I shelved it for a while. But now that it's been a few months, the siren song of other people saying all of these really good things about this book is making me start to question my own read on it again, and I don't know, man. The premise still sounds cool. It's about these two sisters who, when their mom is killed, they have this like gigantic debt that passes down to them, and they don't know what the fuck they're gonna do about that. So one of the sisters enters this like super deadly competition game thing that takes place in this cavernously big magical mansion, and whoever wins this competition will be able to get whatever they want granted to them as a wish, and the sister's idea is that they can use this to clear the debt. But I guess the main character, Ophelia, just sees her sister as a shitty because she's like, there's no shot that my sister is going to win this competition. Like, she's definitely going to die in there, and the only way that I can save her is if I also enter this competition and also win, because I mean, I guess maybe like not everybody has to die. Like, it's not like there can be only one survivor thing, even though very few people are said to survive. It's just there can be only one winner, you know? Point is, she goes into this gigantic magical twisting corridor mansion, and she ends up being forced to ally with this strange and mysterious man who's also hot and maybe has secrets, and they have to work together to hopefully win the competition. That's what's going on in this book. You guys know I love a trial, I love a game, I love a deadly competition. It's the part of my soul that was first nourished by the Hunger Games when I was 11 reading it for the first time. And don't get me wrong, that synopsis does raise a lot of questions, but also like it could be pretty cool. It could be good if the answers to those questions are reasonable. Part of why I got it initially was because it kind of reminded me of Caraval, which is a young adult series that I did not like very much, but I so badly want there to be a series out in the world that is just Caraval but good, because the premise in Caraval is great. The vibes, the potential for the atmosphere, like it's all fantastic. It's just somehow the book ended up kind of sucking, and this could be that but good. I don't know. It's a risky pick knowing what I know about myself, but at this point the curiosity is just too strong. I am but a passenger in my own life. There's nothing I can do at this point. I have to know what happens. Okay, next up after that I have In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. This is also like a massive tonal shift. This book is a critical darling. This is like extremely well-reviewed historical fiction that is about World War I, but it's not your typical historical fiction World War book with like the woman facing away from you on the cover and the planes in the sky, possibly even the shadows of said planes, but they're on the ground and you're looking from the top down at the woman facing away from you. It's not like that. This book is, to my knowledge, this tragic queer wartime love story between these two men who meet, I think when they're in college or like right at the end of high school. I think they're both very young, and the two of them are just living life and studying and like mutually pining for each other, but they don't actually know that the two of them are in love. They both think it's unrequited until one of them, partially to escape his feelings for his friend and like the havoc that that's wreaking upon his inner world, he enlists in the World War I war effort, and he thinks that he's going to escape all of this, but to his surprise, not only does the guy that he's low-key in love with also enlist, but so do all of their classmates and all of their friends. They all want to join him on the front lines of war. So that's what's going on, and I know that part of the premise might sound wholesome on the surface, but do not be fooled. There's no way that this book is anything other than like really, really sad. I don't believe it. I imagine that this will grind up my heart into a fine dust, but honestly, that's what I want right now. I feel like I haven't read anything sad yet this year, like truly, truly soul-crushingly sad, and I don't know what that says about me, that's what I'm yearning for in this current moment, but that's why it's here. I don't know. Hopefully it'll be good. Hopefully it'll like beat me up a little bit, but not too bad to never want to read anything else ever again. You know what I'm saying? Okay, next up we have A Dark and Drowning Tide, and this is not the cover that you'll see in bookstores. This is the Illumicrate edition, and I'm gonna sound like an insane person for saying this, but I made the decision to get on like wait lists for book box subscriptions when I saw that R.F. Kuang had announced another fantasy book. I'm just still really bitter that I never got one of the really pretty special editions of Babel. Okay, you gotta put your chips down early. But in the interim, I've gotten a few other pretty books. I actually like sprayed edges like this that are high effort and not just, again, bright candy red. The premise of this book is basically fantasy Murder on the Orient Express, except it's on a boat, and the main character, who is the girl that's investigating the crime, she is forced to ally with the only other person that she is positive didn't do it, who just so happens to be this other girl, her least favorite girl in the world, her longtime academic rival with whom she shares a mildly antagonistic relationship. For pretty similar reasons as with Blood River Brighthaven, which we talked about earlier, the premise to this is just, it's catnip to me. I love shit like this. I love a murderer still at large. I love a political machination. I love a detective investigation. I love a scheme. I especially love a scheme that goes like 12 layers deeper than anybody could have possibly predicted, and however will we scheme our way out of this scheme. I just have high hopes for this. Next up, second to last, I have Thick. This is an essay collection, and like most essay collections, it's not really well captured by the tiny synopsis on the back of the book. The only thing that you really get from the back of the book is that this is an essay collection by a Black woman who is looking at things like race and gender and class and beauty standards through the lens of intersectional feminism. But that could look a million different ways depending on who's writing it. So what does that mean? Where is she going to draw from? What are the 8 essays in this book actually going to be about? You don't really know. That's how essay collections are. They're kind of hard to shop for in that way unless you already know that you like the writer. So when it comes to why I actually bought this book, despite not knowing very much about it, I can give you a few reasons. And the first of those is I'm really suggestible when it comes to essay collections, especially when I'm traveling and I want to get a book. The essay collection section in bookstores is usually pretty small, and you start like recognizing what you see there, and most of them are pretty good. I've read a couple of duds, but for the most part, I tend to prefer the anthology style format of an essay collection over longer nonfiction books usually, so they just like accrue over time on my bookshelves. But this one in particular I also got because Roxane Gay gave it a really good review on Goodreads when I looked it up, and I adore her. I love her work. I think that she especially has fantastic taste in nonfiction, in things like essay collections and also short stories, and I trust that taste with my life. So that review was really everything that I needed to know. So that's why it's here. Even though the White Album didn't work out for me, I'm still like very much in the mood to read a good essay collection, and hopefully that's what this will be. Last up, I think, hopefully, I have This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan, and this is an easy breezy quick book for me to talk about because this is just the sequel in the same series as Before I Let Go, which was a romance novel that I absolutely adored that I read last year, and I'm pretty sure that I picked this up at the store the day that it was released last year and then just proceeded to never actually read it, which is criminal. It's criminal because I know that I'm going to like it. I really appreciated how mature Before I Let Go was. The characters were actual mid-30s adults with lives and kids and histories, and they responded to conflict and to to situations around them in a way that even when it was irrational and unfortunate, it wasn't immature. Like they still very much felt grown when I was reading it. And the story was just real and grounded in a way that I really liked. I found it very refreshing. Anyways, I don't think I've actually heard a massive amount about this book other than just general positivity, but this book follows one of the best friends of the female main character from book one, and she has to sort of reconfigure her entire life after her husband of many, many years ends up cheating on her and just leaving her in a really bad spot because, and I hope that I'm remembering this right, I hope I'm not just making shit up, but I'm pretty sure that this is especially bad because she had been a stay-at-home mom for like the entire duration of her marriage, and now she has to like go back out into the world and take care of herself and also take care and look after her children, who of course are also grieving the relationship of their parents. And through this entire process, she ends up meeting a single dad and they fall in love. It's like a blending of the families drama that comes with that, I think, type romance. There's also, I believe, autistic rep in this book. I think in his kids. I don't believe it's him, but I honestly have no idea. But I'm interested to see how she pulls that off. And again, I imagine it'll be messy. I imagine it'll be complicated, but hopefully it'll also be really, really good. Anyways, that's a wrap. We're done. Dude, if I told you I've been filming this video for 6 hours, would you believe me? How long is this for you? I feel like this is gonna be like 25 minutes. What happened? What happened to my ability to like string together a coherent sentence? Okay, you might see me one more time before I post the video that is sending me to an early grave, because I haven't decided yet if I'm doing a sunrise on the reaping vlog. I don't even have a copy yet because I was super busy on Tuesday when it came out, and then on Wednesday it was no longer at my store. But I kind of want to do a vlog. I don't know what's gonna happen. Dude, I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Like, I might die making this video. You might never see me again. You might wake up to an obituary and it's just a picture of Lexi, aka Newly Nova. I have been living my entire life inside of a meat grinder, the likes of which you will understand as soon as you see the topic of this video. But for now, just envision it as a meat grinder, and like what's coming out is just pieces of my spirit that I'm gonna have to like reform somehow into meatballs in order to record a sunrise on the reaping vlog. I don't know, man, just don't get your hopes up, okay? I don't even know why I brought it up. Okay, this needs to be over. I need to end this video. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for watching. I hope you had a good time. I'm sorry for the experience that you've just had. Okay, that's everything. Bye.